up with the leaders today and have a great time. And I always have the offer for adults to head up as well if you've got short attention spans or like crafts. So it's always a good opportunity. And Blake's heading off straight away. It's good to see you, Blake. Anyway, my name's Matt, if I don't know you. I've got the joy of sharing with you tonight. And I really loved this series. It's been, I personally loved it. It's just really simple, enjoyable, but powerful as well. The concept that we as God's people are blessed by him, that we're in his care, we're in his protection, we're in his favour through the person of Jesus. And from the overflow of that in our life, it bubbles up and we have the privilege of blessing those around us. Those in our families, those in this building, those in our lives. And we're looking at service. And again, it's not something that I need to convince you of. I could go through passage after passage after passage and show you that Jesus served. And no one would argue. It would be like, yeah, it's obvious, Jesus is serving. But what I want us to do tonight is I want to try and inspire us in how we can serve the beautiful land that we have here. I might bring up a picture, thanks. I've got this picture. We've had it 5 weeks ago. This is our home. This is our field that we've been given to work. Nice field, eh? We scored on this one here. But this is our land, and there's a beautiful verse. I love this, one of my favourite verses of Scripture in 1 Peter 2:12. I'm just going to read it out from here. It says, live such good lives among the pagans. Okay, so live such good lives amongst people, the people that don't know Jesus, that though they accuse you of doing wrong, okay, though they don't really understand what you do at church, they don't understand what you believe, they don't understand the things that you do, they may even think it's wrong or immoral or a problem, which I know many of my friends do. They're like, what? I don't get that church thing you do. I don't agree with what you believe. Live such good lives amongst the pagans that though they accuse you of doing wrong, that they may see your good deeds and glorify God on the day he visits us. I think this is a beautiful vision of church, that we're scattered across here, overflowing Jesus' work in our own lives, that we live such good lives that the people who are actually against us praise God because of the good that we do. It's beautiful. Good that we do individually, just in our little spheres of where we are, where we work, where we live, and where we walk. The good that we do corporately together as we combine and partner together and follow Jesus together. Tim Keller, I know an author that many of you love, he talks about from Jeremiah that the church should be seeking the welfare of a city or seeking the welfare of our field. And in an interview, they asked him, how do you know that's happening? How do you know that the church is doing that well? And he answered in a way which really blew my mind. He goes, the way to tell if a church is really seeking the good and seeking the welfare of the city is if you remove that church, they would have to increase the taxes because all the good will be gone. Think of that, like if you just wipe the church out and the people are with it, and you can't do that obviously, but the impact of Jesus' followers' lives individually and corporately should be so significant, it causes so much good that then the state has to step in and cause it. And that scares me because I think about that if we just wiped ourselves out, that probably wouldn't happen in Sydney, but it could. And so as I throw out that vision, and as we think of this land that we call home, or temporary home for a little bit till we jump on planes or wherever we go, what a privilege it is that we can serve and work for good. And many of us are. I love it. Actually, I know so many stories here, and we do scatter and we do live bright lives and we do lean in and serve and love. And I just want to inspire us tonight to keep going or come up with some new ideas or do it a little bit more. But most people don't really live like this. I remember sitting down on the grassy knoll at North Bondi, as I used to do because I used to live on the headland there, and I just went down to read a book. And as happens in Bondi, people sit right next to you. You don't get your own space. So right there, and they were just talking. They were just talking about life, and they were right there. And they were so loud, I couldn't really focus on the book anymore. So I may as well just listen in. And so I had the beautiful just laying there, not making eye contact, listening to 3 or 4 people talk about life. And they were all young. They probably worked in hospitality, probably thought they were all models, got agents, sort of that whole world, really. So really they were unemployed, but That's all right. But they were talking about their friendships, and they're like, "Oh, have you seen this person? Have you seen that person?" And they're like, "Oh, no." But the gist of the conversation was this: it's like, "Where's that person now?" It's like, "Oh, I'm not with that person anymore because that person introduced me to that person, and now I don't need them anymore. And now I'm with those people there. They've introduced me to this party, this crew of people at party, and they're much cooler. So I've moved on from them, and now I'm with them." And then the other people did that. Yeah, I've moved on that. I dated that person. They gave me access to this group here. And it was a story of consumption. It was a story of use. It was a story of people building not just a career, but an image, a fame. They were using and consuming people and groups to get ahead, to chase something which they were trying to achieve. And it was really, really sad. They talked about it with so much joy. And even the people that they used were just like, gone, doesn't matter anymore, no care. It's no surprise that in that passage from Matthew 20, we sort of come across this. You might bring it up on the screen. And we see there the mother of Zebedee's sons. This is just before this. Jesus is talking about how he's going to go to Jerusalem and he's going to die and he's going to rise. And they're hearing that he's going to be king. He's going to be King Jesus, the one with authority, the one who is Lord, the one who is in charge. And we see here James and John's mum, in response to this of Jesus is going to be king. And the mum comes up with the sons. Perfect response is like, "Hey, when you've got all that power, Jesus, do you reckon you can put my sons on your left and right?" Again, using networks, leveraging up for fame, for honor, for power. It's atrocious. And understandably, the other disciples are like, "What? No. And they're probably doing that because they wanted that themselves. They don't really understand what's going on here, do they? James and John. And so what does Jesus do in 26? We'll go to the next one because let's see it up here. And I'll read it here. "Not so with you. Instead, whoever wants to become great among you must be your servant." Radical. "Whoever wants to be first must be your slave. Just as the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve, and to give his life as a ransom for many." As many of us know, the kingdom of God is completely upside down. You don't hear many people talking like this, going, the path to greatness is service. The path to greatness and glory is sacrifice. No other religion really talks like this. In the ancient Near East, all like in the Greek mythology, in all the stories, the gods created mankind because they didn't want to serve. They didn't want to get their hands dirty. We worship a Jesus, a God who came as a servant and got his hands dirty. And as we are living in our land of Bondi, in a world where it's secular, people view us as the problem. Not always, but sometimes they view us as we're the problem with the world. The beliefs we have. What better and more powerful stance can we take as that of a servant? Surrounded by people who have been hurt by the church, who have been hurt by the church's abuses of power over the generations, and people who have been hurt by the church's attempts to regain that power. How powerful it is for us to follow in the footsteps of Jesus and take the position of a servant. Not giving up on truth, not giving up on what we believe in, but taking the stance and the posture of a servant to the suburb and the streets and the families and the businesses and wherever we find ourselves. And so really my first point, as I throw that out to us, is pretty quite simple, is that Jesus served. And I want to look at John 13. And we haven't had this read out. And I just want to frame this for us here. So John 13, and this is the story of Jesus washing the disciples' feet. You may be familiar with the story. If you're not, it will be up on the screen right here. A little bit about John, because John is a beautiful gospel. Chapters 1 to 12 is Jesus' public ministry. You get all the big, loud stuff. He's out there. He's interacting with people. There are signs. There are wonders. Chapter 13 to chapter 17 is Jesus' private ministry. It's just him in his last moments before he is crucified on the cross. And chapter 13 is the first little glimpse into him. So we're getting a little glimpse into his secret little chats with the disciples. We're getting a glimpse into him and Jesus' prayers to the Father, and it's beautiful. I encourage you to read it. And so John 13, we're zooming in on Jesus in the last moments He's going to die shortly. And he's spending those moments with the disciples, starting, training, releasing the disciples to be without him. And so what do we see straight away? We see it's the Passover. Most likely, this is the Last Supper from John's perspective. A little bit different to what we have in the other Gospels. We celebrate the communion later on and we remember the body and the blood. And in John, we see some other aspects going on. And so they're probably celebrating the Passover feast. They're in a room and we see right here what takes place. Verse 3, we can see clearly Jesus knew that the Father had put all things under his power. Jesus knew his authority. He knew he was king and that he had come from God. So he knew where he was from and that he was returning to God. So we have here Jesus in his little moments with his disciples, knowing that he is king, knowing the authority that has been granted to him. And then we have this key verse, so what did he do with his disciples? Passover feast. So he got up from the meal, took off his outer clothing, wrapped a towel around his waist, and after that he poured water into a basin and washed his disciples' feet. In these last moments, he basically took off his crown and put on a towel. Culturally, this is crazy as well. You think of the time, you're obviously, in this time, sandals, dirt roads, your feet are filthy. Common practice to do this normally. For some reason, it seems like they haven't been washed already. Maybe there was no one there, maybe there was something there. Jesus sees the need and he washed it. Normally, it's the most menial thing you can do. There are stories of Jewish families who wouldn't even let their Jewish slaves wash the feet because they would have a Gentile slave do it because it was so mean. And Jesus, during the Passover meal, interrupts it, lowers himself, and serves and washes their feet. I hate feet. I find it quite exciting. I do Pilates every now and then, and normally I take my shoes off before I go and just check. And every now and then I'm still wearing shoes. And I'm like, oh, I'm going to take my shoes off. It's going to be disgusting. It's going to smell. And I understand why Jesus washed these feet here. Also, in the Passover meal, they're most likely laying down on this side. So don't think table chairs. They're probably laying down, supporting themselves with their right hand, eating with their left hand. And so if you're laying down, your feet is right next to that person there. And so you want them washed as well. And so in this moment, Jesus is serving really quite practically. But what is more important here is not the act of that he has done, it's the position he has taken. Jesus, who is God, humbles himself, serves, and blesses. And we'll go to verse 12. We're skipping a few bits. We'll come back to the middle bit in a second. Yeah, that's right. We'll go, perfect, thank you there. And so what we see here in verse 13, I'll read from. You call me teacher and Lord, and rightly so, for that is what I am. Now that I, your Lord and teacher, have washed your feet, you also should wash one another's feet. Pretty straightforward here. I have set you an example that you should do as I have done for you. There are some Christian traditions that view feet washing as a sacrament, just like we remember through the Lord's Supper. Some traditions will remember through feet washing as well. And then in 16, he basically goes, if it's good enough for me, your teacher, your rabbi, your king, it's also good enough for you. So simple. And I love how it is, as you will do this, you will be blessed. Some of you might know there's an author called Malcolm Gladwell. People familiar? Maybe one person. Blake, you'll know it's good. Two, but we're on two. Nice, I'm relevant now. But he's a brilliant. He's got a great podcast, books, articles, and he recently in an interview I was listening to is rediscovering faith. So he's not known for his writings on faith, but he grew up in a Mennonite tradition in the States, and they're not as well known in Australia. But he says his interactions with the Mennonite tradition have basically he's been shocked into re-exploring who the person of Jesus is. And he explains simply, he was at a wedding, and it was at a Mennonite wedding, and the bride and the groom, looking beautiful, was in I think it was in a vineyard or an orchard or something. So it sounded really beautiful the way he painted it. And he said after the service, what they did is the groom took off his jacket, the bride took off the veil and the dress. They put on the aprons and they served the meal to all the guests at the wedding. Probably not your ideal wedding, not my ideal wedding. I've already had my ideal wedding, just to clarify. I wouldn't wear my big tie anymore, but that's another story. But he was struck by people who, in their moment where it should have been about them, where they were meant to be lifted high and focused on and glorified, and everyone tells them how beautiful you are, they chose to lower themselves and humbly serve their friends and family. He also talked about going to another Mennonite wedding where they actually washed all the guests' feet, the bride and the groom. They lined up and washed their feet as part of their wedding ceremony because that's how they wanted to live their life. And in a world where this is so countercultural to the point where we may even be like, oh, it's a bit weird. It's a bit, oh. It pierced Malcolm's heart and has enabled him to start open up to the possibility of following Jesus again. And so, as it says in the verses there, this is an example I've set for you, not just the disciples, for you, my people. Years ago, I went to Africa, and I went to a little country called Malawi. I've told some stories from there. But we went there, a team of 14 from our church, and we went there just to serve. And it was beautiful. I remember being in an orphanage and just like cuddling. I remember Stevie, a little orphan that I was like just cuddling, and he had AIDS. I knew he wasn't going to last much longer. And just holding him, cuddling him, praying for him, cleaning his face from the flies. Beautiful. I remember going to well projects and just enabling water for a community. I remember going to a refugee camp where there were literally from Rwanda, Hutus and Tutsis from generations of slaughter being in the church together and just being part of that. And what a privilege it was to serve. But I also remember coming home and there were 14 of us and debriefing, and some people were going, so what? Like, we've had this amazing experience. We've been so blessed, but what are we going to do about it? And people were talking about, I'm going to raise funds. And I remember one person, I'm going to raise money to do glasses for the orphanage because there were plenty of them that had eye problems and couldn't see. Other people were coming up with these amazing ideas of fundraising and that. But there were two people in particular, I remember chatting to them one-on-one, they actually goes, I actually don't really want to do anything for Africa. I've been so struck by the fact of how the church over there just served in their neighborhood. I just want to take what I've learned from there and serve where I am right here. And it's not as easy. And they're going, it's not easy here because it's not just a matter of picking up an orphan off the street and caring for them. But they go, I just want my eyes to be open that I can serve the people that are in front of me already. And so that's what I want to talk about. The next slide, you can see, right? And proximity. So I just want to get practical and inspire and get creative right now. I'm just throwing out ideas and I'm trusting that you will be generating thoughts. Whiteboard session, brainstorm. We don't need to jump on a plane to serve, even though we can be called. But as I've said before, if we're not called somewhere, we are where we're called. And we can serve where we are. Jesus served the people just along the way most of the time. And we happen to have beautiful streets to walk up and down. We happen to work in environments. We happen to be based around many different spheres of influence. And we can just simply serve in those areas. But on top of that, I want to encourage you to serve personally. Have you ever been given a gift that has just been completely wrong for you? Like embarrassingly wrong? A few people are nodding. Saw someone married, not there, it's like that wasn't their partner. But I know, but there's something wrong when you get a gift and you're just like, that, do you even know me? Sort of that feeling, like that's the worst, that I'm not going to use that. I'm lucky to even unwrap that. It was my daughter's birthday party last night. And I love watching their facial expressions and trying to hide disappointment or being just really happy in that. But have you ever been given a gift which has just been perfect? Which is like, oh, that person knows me. That person loves me. That person gets me. And it's received with just a beauty and a joy, and there's a relational thing that forms in that little moment. And they're rare gifts, because most gifts are like, here's $50 gift voucher. Don't get it for that. But when we serve, we're aiming to serve personally. We're aiming for a special gift that truly blesses, rather than something from the present cupboard that you don't want, and then you get the thing that I don't want. When I'm thinking and listening, I want to serve really personally. Sometimes we can serve really generally and we can bless everybody, but sometimes everyone's got their own stories and their own needs. And if we can really serve powerfully into their story, I think God can do some great things. To help us with that, I've got this RPMS. We're all different, as I said. Some people have deep relational needs that we can serve, especially after COVID. There's isolation, there's loneliness, especially in Bondi. Most people here, family is away, and they miss family drastically, and they're longing for family deep down. And so maybe for the people in your world, and again, start thinking here, start dreaming here, how can we serve relationally? Maybe it is just having dinners. Maybe it is just having coffees. I know there are people here who have coffee with people just to bless. Not because they're friends catching up, but they're having a coffee just to bless and so they can listen. I know I have people who every now and then just call me up and go, hey, can we babysit for you so you and your wife can go out and have a dinner? A beautiful relational blessing, act of service that blesses us deeply. Maybe you're for P, maybe there are just simple physical or practical ways that we can serve. I know when I first moved into my house, our house was a little bit run down, and I was with Blake and I was whinging because as you walked in, the whole roof, the paint was peeling off. And it was disgusting and it was a little bit embarrassing. You know, you walk into a house and you're like, yeah, okay. And the next day, Blake basically goes, hey, I'm coming to paint your roof for you. And he came, he put his headphones in, didn't talk much, it's fine. I was trying to talk and he's like, no, I'm painting, go away. And he sanded it back, he painted it white, he then did a little bit of extra painting. And that blessed me so much because I'm a rubbish painter, I don't really know what to do. I'd be up there and be like, and he, in a simple little thing, has blessed me. And it blesses me still to the day because every night I walk in and I look up and it's still white and not peeling. And when other people walk into my house, they're blessed because they're not like, oh, your roof's about to fall in. So thank you, man. Simple, practical ways to bless. Meals, mowing lawns, helping people move. Just have to, often half of the time, this takes keeping our eyes open, our ears open. And going, how can she help with that? I've also had many friends who just, whenever I move, they offer to lend a hand. And that's, if you've ever moved house, people that are actually willing to help you, they're good friends right there, aren't they? Or you have those friends who are always sick on that day as well. They're the other friends. No. Maybe there are mental needs that we can serve. So many people are struggling with mental health. And so many people struggle with their mental health on their own. There are so many needs we can meet there. Maybe there are depression, maybe there's anxiety, maybe there's mood swings, maybe there's a lot going on. How can we serve in those things? I've got a person in my life and they are a loud life to party type of person. But I know they struggle with a lot in their mind. And I know that around once a month, they're going to go missing. And I'll be like, where's that person gone? And I know, and I've learned, actually I don't know, I've learned that in that time, they're hiding in their house, bunkering down, wrestling with the demons in their mind. And they're too scared to go outside. And they're lonely in that moment. And I've slowly learned that in those moments when I haven't seen him for a while and I know he's in the country, just to send him a text going, hey, can I go buy your coffee just for 5 minutes? And it blesses him. It's not like I have to sit with him for 7 hours and chat about everything. It's just like, hey, I'm here, hope you're okay. All good? And he's like, yeah, all good. Simple, and I get a coffee as well, it's always good, so it's fine. Simple ways that we can just bless. If we just have our eyes open, our ears open, and our schedule a little bit free. Relational, physical, mentally, and spiritual needs. I know there's someone in this church who prays for every colleague they work with. And on those colleagues' birthdays, they go up to them and go, hey, it's your birthday. Can I bless you just by praying for you, praying for God's blessing on your life? Simple thing, bold thing, and they love it. Every person in their workplace accepts it, looks forward to it. It's beautiful. We as God's people are to serve. If we can serve those around us in a personal way across their different needs, I think God can do some pretty cool things in those moments. But with that, there are two more, not the last one yet. Partnering. Serving is actually so much more fun together. We can do it on our own, but doing it with a few other people is so much more enjoyable. Not saying it's not enjoyable, but it's sort of a way it's designed to be. You may be in a family here, you may have housemates here, you may have some good friends here. Get together, have a conversation and think, how can we do something together to bless in the spheres that you are in? It takes a little conversation, a little bit of prayer, and a little bit of initiative. But you can also partner just with things that are already happening. There's no point reinventing the wheel. There are great things all across Bondi. Wayside Chapel are doing a beautiful job ministering in Bondi to those living a bit rough. And there's an open invitation from them. They have a community meal on Tuesdays. And they've invited us going, hey, do you have people that can just come to that meal and chat? To say hi and chat to people. They go, do you have any, I chatted and they go, do you have anyone who can play chess? There's a few homeless people that love chess and we just need some people that can play chess with them. Or play some music, or do some art classes, or kick a footy. There's an open invitation just down the road for us to partner. There's a big kitchen, Jewish ministry, and they just make meals for people in need. We're chatting to them about how we can help. And you get in the kitchen and you just cut things up, put them in boxes, and all these meals go to people in need and people in hospital and people that have no one else to provide meals. And it's an open invitation to come help. There's Anglican, there's people that clean the beach. There's a Rough Edges Cafe, which is in Darlinghurst. It's helped by the Anglican Church there, who are doing ministry to those doing it rough as well. And there's open invitations. So we can do this together. We can do this together, or you can just go on your own. I'm just throwing things out to us tonight. And I'm not leaving with you, but if something is sticking to your heart, lead us in this. Don't wait for me to lead us in this. Don't wait for Blake to lead us. Lead us, as Jesus has already led us. But lastly, as I finish, how do you serve powerfully? I've seen serving done so poorly. I've seen serving done out of duty. You know, where people are doing things because they should do it, but there's no heart, there's no love, there's no compassion, there's just dryness. I've seen serving where it's more about the performance of the service rather than actually what you're doing. And it's a big show, there's lights, it's exciting, but it's very rarely often about the actual who it's for. It's like, look how good we are, look what I'm doing. I've seen people serving to wrestle with internal demons. They think they're a bad person, and if they start doing some good things, they will feel better about themselves. Or people who have served on their own strength, and they're trying to do things, and they start strong, and then 2 weeks later, they're a little bit weaker. And then a month later, they're a little bit tighter. And then 2 months later, they're bitter and angry about why they're even doing it. And they stop and they vow never to do it again because of how hard it was. If we go back to John, we'll go back to John, next slide. This was right between Jesus washed the feet and then he said later on, go do likewise. But in the middle, right there, there's a little argument, a little conversation. And we said, Jesus, he came to Simon Peter, so he's walking around the circle, washing their feet. And he said to him, Lord, are you going to wash my feet? And Jesus simply replied, you do not realize now what I'm doing, but later you will understand. No, says Peter, you shall never wash my feet. He didn't want Jesus to lower himself. And Jesus answered, unless I wash you, you have no part with me. Jesus served out of his relationship with the Father. And what's going on here is this act of service is pointing forward to Jesus' ultimate service of his death on the cross, where we are washed clean. Jesus is saying, if we want to serve like him, we need to receive his washing first. And that is where the power comes from. We don't go out with good ideas and strong muscles and resources. We go out with Jesus' love in our hearts. washed clean by him, motivated by love so things don't become projects, motivated by love so things don't get tired, motivated by love so things don't get old, motivated by love that we can keep leaning in and loving and serving. Being washed by Jesus means we can take our eyes off ourselves and truly bless people in his name. Jesus only expects his disciples to wash someone else's feet after they have been washed themselves. Serving is not about getting Jesus' favor. Serving is a response to having his favor in the person of Jesus by what he's done on the cross. Serving done beautifully is motivated by Jesus' service for us. Service done beautifully overflows in humble, simple acts. Serving done beautifully meets real needs, provides, it protects, it has favor to individuals, families, and communities. And serving done beautifully, I truly believe, does that vision. And we might bring up that picture again and see that 1 Peter 2:12, which I started with, that God will see our good deeds, or they will see our good deeds. The people that we're thinking of, the people we're sharing life with, that even though they may think we're a little bit crazy, might believe some weird things, that they will see the good that we do and praise our Father. If you're tired, or maybe there's 2 things actually. Encourage you to dream and to think. How can we serve? In little ways, in big ways, in significant ways. Have that prayer. Have these conversations. And let's do it together. As I said, I'm not up here to lead us in it. I'm out here to let's have this conversation. When you're in your midweek groups and your DNA groups, when you're with your families, have those chats. How can we do this? Because it often never gets around to actually doing something about it. So many people that have a heart for something, but very rarely do anything with that heart for that. Sometimes we just need a little bit of let's actually go do it. But if you're tired, maybe you've served, maybe you've invested into things, and you're just I'm struggling to keep my own head above water at the moment. I encourage you, the first spot to put yourself is to be washed fresh by Jesus. To be washed clean and to receive from him. There's nothing worse than people going out sharing the good news of Jesus with a big frown on their face. Big tired frown on their faces. And so we're gonna take the Lord's Supper, and Blake will lead us through that shortly. But as we take that, if you're tired, ask him to nourish you and refresh you. I'm going to be out here at the end of the service. If you want to pray and just be refreshed, I'd love to pray that for you. But I'm fine right up now, Blake. Is that all right?
Thank you, Matt.
Amen.